Okay, so this is going to be really off what we normally do. It's not studio mate in another state. It's not, oh, I've got an axe to grind point to make. I'm just taking the opportunity to show you somebody who's been really important to me for the last 15 years. In different videos, I've talked about Bugsy, or I've said hi when he was walking by in my studio, my different studios, or chastised Kitty for meowing too much. But I haven't really shown them, and this is Bugsy. Bugsy's 15. Bugsy's 15. And last night he was diagnosed with cancer. You can see he has a tumor in his mouth, and it's not uncommon in dogs, but you can see it. There's actually a couple different tumors in there. So the vet has given him 2 weeks to live. Two weeks. We missed it. We missed the tumor. We missed all of it. But I just want to talk about this little guy for a few minutes while he's still here. I got Bugsy. When did I get you? Was it August? I think it was either August or September 15 years ago. I was deeply depressed. I was deeply, deeply depressed because my heart was broken. And a friend of mine kept saying, we need a new object of your affection. And he kept calling me and over again saying, I have somebody for you. And it was Bugsy. And I said, I don't want to own a dog. I don't like owning, I don't like owning animals, and I don't like telling them what to do. So he conned me into babysitting for a weekend. We just need you to sit with him for a weekend. That was 15 years ago. Woo. In the 15 years, we've hiked most of Cape Cod. We hiked Dartmouth. We hiked all over New Bedford. We hiked in Smithfield, Rhode Island. We've been to a lot of places. This little guy has been to Manhattan and stood in multi-million-dollar galleries. I know, you're hot. I think it's the antibiotic that's making him hot. Because the growth is infected. But anyway, he's hiked in multi-million-dollar galleries, marched all over Manhattan with me, all over Long Island. Whoops, he's gonna go lay on the tile. Anyway, we went to Virginia, we moved to Virginia, and then we moved here. But in the 15 years, he has been nothing short of my best friend. He's been my studio mate. There are times I've been so depressed I couldn't leave my house, but I had to because of Bugsy. I had to take care of Bugsy. And in a couple weeks he's going to be gone. I've made him into a character in my book. I've done a couple paintings of him. But we've had so many adventures, especially in Providence, Rhode Island. Riding my scooter. He used to put his paws up on my shoulders when we were riding the scooter. We'd ride in the day, we'd ride at night. We've run out of gas together and had to push the scooter through the city. But we've had to do that in a number of places. But he's always a good sport. I want to share a story, a couple of stories, because I just want to be able to look back and remember that what a good pal he has been. We were hiking, and how wonderfully we fit together. We were hiking one day in the National Seashore on Cape Cod, and you're not supposed to do that with dogs, but it was the middle of winter. And it was snowing, it had started snowing, and we were walking down a swamp trail that's very famous. There's a boardwalk in a swamp trail. And we stopped on the actual trail, there was dirt, and we just stood there for a second with all this marsh around us, and we were just standing there like, isn't this magical? He's sitting down, I'm standing over him, and all of a sudden, seconds after we stopped, or maybe 45 minutes to 60 seconds after we stopped, this buck came flying out of the marsh. Remember? This buck came flying out of the marsh and jumped over the trail. And I swear to God, I looked down at him and he looked up at me like, did you see that? It was absolutely magnificent, and with the snow, it was such a magical moment. Another favorite story of mine was we were hiking once again near the National Seashore on Cape Cod, and we're on this trail, and there were two trails, and one was a little bit higher than the other. We're on the low trail, and I look up and I see a little head doing this. And I'm watching bugs out of the corner of my eye. I didn't have his leash in my hand. I had let it go because he liked to run. But I let it go, and we're walking along, and I'm looking at this head going like this. And all of a sudden, he looks up at the head, and then he looks at me, and he goes, "I'll be back in a minute," and he's gone. He is now chasing a turkey down a dirt road. He's chasing the turkey, and I'm chasing bugs. It was awesome. There was another time we were hiking or walking a trail in Harwich, Massachusetts, and it's called Bell's Neck. And we're walking this one part of the trail, and there's nobody around. People don't walk this particular end too much. And a canoe started to go by. Not a canoe, a kayak. And he looks at me, "I'll be back in a minute." Shoom, off he goes, swam out to the kayak, jumped on top of it, looked at the people there, jumped back in and swam back. And that was really unusual because he didn't like to swim all that much. We used to go to the Punkhorn in Harwich, Mass. And we'd walk another trail that people didn't use very much. And I knew about this little opening to the pond, to this big pond. We had our own little secret spot. And I would bring roast beef. I would bring a package of roast beef with me. We'd play fetch for a little while on the shore, and then I'd break out the roast beef, and both he and I would go in the water. But he would only come if I had a piece of roast beef, and then I'd have him swim around and around. What I wouldn't give to bring him back there right now. He used to climb trees that had fallen over, and would be sticking out over a cliff. He would climb them. He's done a lot. There was one walk, the last walk we took when I had a truck. We were in Pawtucket at my Studio 120, and we got in the truck because I needed a break, and I needed to give him a break. And we got in the truck, and we went to Smithfield, and we went out to this park, really big state park. And it had snowed, and they didn't clear all the trails. And of course, what do I pick? The trails that haven't been cleared. So here's this, 19-pound nothing jumping up and down in the snow trying to get through until I picked him up and put him on my shoulders and carried him. And he, at one point, he got so tired, but he climbed up this huge hill, and there was no way out. We just had to keep going forward. but he climbed up on this huge hill and he would not come down. And this is something I really regret doing, and I've never told anybody, but I really regret it. I grabbed his leash and pulled it and kind of pulled him down. It was a great day, but that's always gonna haunt me, that I had been mean to him. I try really hard to think about the good times, but I think about the many, many, many times he's had to sit and wait for me because I'm at work, or I'm painting, or I'm drawing. Many, many, many days, huh, honey? And now we're only looking at a few left. He has been my best friend for 15 years. When he was little, I would climb into bed and he would jump up and he'd climb right between my legs. I sleep out like this. And he'd sleep right between my legs and I'd have to roll over because I sleep on my stomach. But I had to angle it so I couldn't disturb him because he wasn't going to move. He did that for a long time. And then there were times I would wake up and he would be right here, his head on my shoulder. He's laying down. He's so hot. He's laying on the tile. I used to do something called bowling for puppies, where I would take him. We had a slippery floor in one of the spaces I was in, and I'd go, bowling for puppies, and I'd slide him backwards, and he'd do this, and he'd get mad, and he'd run at me, and I'd pick him up, and I'd go, bowling for puppies, and do it again. And we would just keep doing this, and he would act like he was angry, but he kept coming back. I found out this morning that his brother Bo passed away 3 years ago. And Bo used to come, I used to babysit Bo. He'd come over the house, and Bo liked to dig holes. Bugsy's not a hole digger. He's not a troublemaker, but Bo loved digging holes. And Bo liked to dig holes under the fence and get out. So I'd let them out in the backyard, and the first couple of times I didn't really think anything of it. I would just let them out. And I would catch them. I would catch Bo digging a hole. Well, there was one particular day, Bo started digging the hole, and Bugsy was like watching it, I guess, and watching him. And Bo got just as far as he could. He was a little pudgier than Bugs. He was a little roly-poly. And so he got Bugs to dig the rest of the way and get under the fence and keep digging so Bo could get out. My son was babysitting him. My son was home with him for the day, and they took off. And they apparently ran up the street and landed on a policeman's yard, and they were just rolling around in the grass together. That time we lived by the beach, West Dennis Beach on the Cape, and I would take him down there as often as I could in the off-season and just let him run. We'd go to the end of the beach down by the jetty, and I'd let him run and run and run and run and run. He loved the salt water. He loved the ocean. And he loved seaweed. We would play fetch with seaweed, or I'd hold it up and swing it, and he'd run and try and get it. He loved to chew on oyster shells. I've been in Florida, we've been in Florida for almost 4 years, and all I wanted to do was take him home so he could smell the ocean again. Take him back to Providence where we had friends. So it looks like in some way, at some point in time, I will be taking him home, but he won't be able to swim or play with seaweed, chew on oyster shells, or chase rabbits and squirrels in our backyard. He'll never be going to Pride again in Providence, which was just magnificent. He and I would ride in our scooter. He'd get in the back and ride. He loved it so much. We'd go down to Pride. We'd go to Waterfire. We'd go to Portuguese festivals. We'd go to Utrecht, which is now Dick Blegg. He was a frequent flyer there. He was well loved. Yeah, we loved riding around Providence and Pawtucket and Central Falls. We'd stop at stoplights and people would take his picture. We'd go to the dog park. I wish this didn't have to end. Oh my God, the dog park. I just remembered one more story. When he was a puppy, when he was about under a year old, I took him to Drummer Boy Park in Harwich. And I don't know if it still is, but it was, I just thought of another great story. It was a dog park, and people would let their dogs just run and run. And my little guy would only run with the big dogs. And he would try and tell them what to do when he was little and a puppy. And the big dogs were so funny. They would just basically, slap him and go, "Look at Whippersnapper, this is how you behave." So he learned dog behavior there. It made it easier when he'd go to doggy daycare when we lived in New Bedford. All right, one last great story that I want to share. There's a beach in Orleans where they used to allow dogs, and they don't anymore because new people came in and bought property nearby. This was us oftentimes the happiest times of our lives together, our life together. I took him to this little beach, and there's this gigantic boulder out in the water, and at low tide, the dogs could run through the water and run to this boulder, and they all wanted to smell it. Well, little one over here, I would let go of his leash and he would fly through the water. Just fly through the low tide water. And somehow he figured out how to climb up that rock and get to the top. And he would just stand up there like king of the mountain. And all the other dogs, they'd bark and they'd scamper and they'd try and get up, and they couldn't get up. But somehow he figured out how to climb that rock. He was something. My little man. My little pooper. So I'm glad I got to share him with you. Finally. Sorry I didn't do this sooner. I'm going to go kiss him now. He's asleep. He's on antibiotics and painkillers, so he just fell asleep. He stopped panting. I got to go kiss him. Thanks for letting me talk. About Bugsy.